external validation is artificial validation.
Welcome to Agency for Change, a podcast from KidGlov that brings you the stories of changemakers who are actively working to improve our communities. In every episode, we'll meet with people who are making a lasting impact in the places we call home.
Hey everyone, this is Lynn Weinman, president of KidGlov. Welcome to another episode of the Agency for Change podcast. Today's guest is my friend Monique Farmer. She's the president of Avant Solutions, a public relations firm designing customized communication strategies that work. We're exploring the fascinating journey behind her new book. And we're going to dive into the innovative approaches Avant Solutions employs to craft tailored communication strategies for clients across various industries. Monique, I am eager to talk with you today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm excited about this discussion this afternoon, and I appreciate you extending the invitation. I know you've got a good following of listeners for Agency for Change, so I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Oh, Monique, it is great to have you. It's always fantastic to get to talk with you, and I know our listeners will love what you have to share. Let's even just start with you telling us more about Avant Solutions.
For sure. So Avant Solutions is a PR communication and marketing firm that was born in August of 2019 materially, but it was really born in my imagination probably about a decade before then. And I like to tell people that it was probably around 2010. I was in the process of interviewing for potential new role as the head of a firm, someone else's firm. And at the time, as part of that interview process, I heard myself say, I'd like to own my own firm someday. And I'm a huge believer of our thoughts become reality and the words we speak can become reality. So 10 years later, it ended up becoming reality. Our places where we like to tell people we play to, Lynn, are in internal, external communication strategies. So we sit down with organizations as part of an initial consultation or even discovery once we've agreed to work together to really listen to what they've tried before, what their pain points are, and to make a recommendation about a comprehensive communication strategy or approach for them, whether that's for internal. We have some clients who come to us who are just trying to build their culture and get a good cadence of communication for doing that well and really resonating with their workforce. We have other clients, some of them corporate, some of them like local government, state government. We've even done a couple of federal government projects, but they sometimes need all of it, right? Like the consult on
Yeah.
internal and then like what they need to do externally depending on what it is that they're trying to achieve. The next space is media relations. Got lots of relationships, past, present. Some of our people have moved on to other markets, which we always lament when that happens. But we do like to make sure that our clients' stories are being told,
Yeah.
wide reach. So we work there. We media train too. So we've trained corporate leadership teams, some local CEOs. We've also trained some nonprofit, their entire boards or their president or their executive directors or CEOs to be ready for when it's their time to go on camera. We also teach them some strategies that work in other spaces, like at the board table, communication from
Yeah.
work when they're doing like a town hall meeting. And then we do executive communication. So that crosses over to into that space of some ghostwriting for leaders, some thought leadership platform building, all of those things. So
Monique, I know that you and your team are absolute pros. I should let everyone know we get the chance to partner sometimes.
yeah.
Avant Solutions and KidGlov like to go in together because we each have our areas of specialty. But I love that you mentioned that you focus on internal communications because I think sometimes we forget that our internal teams have such power in spreading the messages that
Oh
we
yeah.
want to get out.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yep, sometimes they get left out, and if you work at a place, you don't necessarily like to read about what's happening at your place
Oh,
on Friday.
it's the worst.
Like, huh?
Yeah.
Ain't nobody
Nothing makes you feel less connected to than to read something about your employer in the newspaper or hear it on the radio or even to hear it through social media. So I do think that's great. So you touched a little bit on this about how you kind of spoke your vision of entrepreneurship into reality, which I love that story. But what inspired you to start this journey, to start your own company? And then two-part question here. Have there been any surprises along the way in your entrepreneurial journey?
That's a great question. What inspired me to start? I think it probably depends on the day how I answer that question.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
really, really, really at the deep rudimentary root of it, I believe that I had to make a choice. At the time I was teaching, I love teaching, by the way. I was teaching full time at University of Nebraska Lincoln, and full course schedule, professor of practice, 80% teaching, which really is mostly 100% teaching. And then if you can fit some other stuff in, good for you. 4 classes one semester, 3 the next semester, trying to also concurrently build this business. And I started initially with some team members. I had a lady who had retired from the school district with me who was free, and she was like, "I'll help." And I was so gracious to have her support on my team because she knew me and she knew like my formulas and how I like stuff put together. So that's always good when you don't have to train from scratch somebody who is there to support you. So I did have some help at the very beginning, which made it more feasible for me to be in the classroom because I was teaching in person too. I was driving to Lincoln about 3 or 4 times a week, teaching in person. And then, also I rode the shuttle. So I'd be doing work on the shuttle, like
That's a
answering.
lot. That's a huge full schedule.
It was too much, and so I needed to make the choice, and so, I did lament it at the time, but it has been good. I made the decision to go all in, go full-time working on the firm. So I kinda had a soft launch of it and went full-time in June of 2022. But I need my teaching fix. I'm lucky to get to have it, and I did find an opportunity to do that, so I teach just 1 class now. I teach 1 class for the University of Texas at Austin, all online. But I mean, there is not a day that goes by that a student doesn't need some. They email, they set time on my calendar, and
Yeah,
I love being able to pour into the next generation of PR communication professionals. I know you get that itch too because you all were there at UNL too as some professional support for our
that's
students.
right.
Appreciated that.
I love to support people that are coming into the communications industry or the creative industry. I think
Yeah.
sometimes parents don't believe this is a legitimate career, and you and I both know we have benefited ourselves. We've seen other people rise up through the ranks, so it is a great career, but people need to connect and know that. I think your students also must really benefit from your real world, your in it everyday experience. Because the thing that is happening right now is that the world of communications and the tools that we have access to and the mediums that our audiences are interacting with are just changing so rapidly. Even if you stopped with the knowledge you had at this time last year,
Oh my
you would
god.
be behind where you need to
Way
be
behind.
relevant now. Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, yesterday I was in a meeting and we were talking about just using all these different tools, right? What do you use? Chat GPT to use
Oh,
Bard. I think Bard has changed its name already. Watson. And there's I guess some kind of plugin that you can put in the chat where you can just speak and dictate to it. I'm like, huh? What? How do I
where
get
is that? Yes,
right?
I know,
So
right?
he's supposed to be sending it something called Whisper. I'm sure some of your listeners will know, but I fell a little behind because he wasn't a comms person. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I need that.
All right. If somebody knows about Whisper, reach out to us. But Monique, I'm going to go Google that as soon as we're done. Actually, staying on top of trends leads into the next question I want to ask you because as I was getting ready for our conversation today, I was on your website, which is a fantastic website, and I found this blog highlighting the 2024 public relations trends to
Oh,
watch.
yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to share a few of the top trends.
For sure, and I just spoke about this too recently. I had the privilege of being on a panel for Hy-Vee. They were doing a diversity summit for business owners across the city, I believe across the state. And so we did have this question. But shout out to Jana Ohm on our team who wrote the piece that I believe you're referencing. But one of the first ones that we talked about on that panel a couple weeks back was authenticity, right? Like building
Yeah.
authentic voice, building genuine relationships. I think that can get lost with the tools that we have at our fingertips nowadays. And you know, as well as I do, Lynn, anyone who has played with or used Chat GPT in their work, I think Chat GPT is a great brainstorming partner, right? Like it can save
Yes.
tons of time. There are so many ways to generate prompts where it's kind of like another person helping to brainstorm with you. I do not believe Chat GPT is the tool that you want to use if you're a writer who's trying to come across in an authentic way. So much of what it exports is very generic and vanilla. And after a while, I think we run the risk of many brands coming across in such a generic fashion that they don't feel like they're speaking to the audience in the way that we as professionals are trained to do so that those messages resonate. And so I think authenticity is a big one that we all have to be very cognizant of and keep top of mind. And it starts with aligning your actions and your communication with those core values. And you want to create that solid foundation for meaningful connections. And so that would be the first one. I'm big on, and you and I had this discussion before we started recording and going live, but how do we use the information that we have to inform our communication plans and strategies?
Yes.
How do we make sure that we've drilled down enough to understand that client, to understand that topic or issue, to understand that audience so that we are using the right channels to connect with them. We are where they are on a day-to-day basis, so that
Yes.
those messages meet them in places and spaces that they're already navigating day to day, and that we can cut above the clutter. So using our data to inform our planning, and then also using what we learn as part of that research on the measurement side to
Mhm.
understand whether what we are saying we're after, what we've agreed with the client on that we're after, we can achieve. And then I think, the third one is obvious. We've talked about it a little bit, but just artificial intelligence persistent presence in everything. Like it to
Yes.
the point, if you weren't already starting to figure out how these tools worked when they really hit the world by storm, we're about like November 2022, I think, is when I first started playing. You're behind. And not only that, but everything is being dotted with artificial intelligence. Every day there's something new that it can do. It gets smarter every time. All of us are using it. Just our day-to-day platforms that we're using, those are being injected with artificial intelligence. I noticed, I think about a while ago, that Zoom now has some capability to boil down our meetings from a transcript standpoint, not just raw transcript, but like, here's the boil down of what you all
Here's the
talked about.
to-do list.
The
Yes,
to-do
absolutely.
what do you know how much time I spend doing that? Like, after meetings, or give that to
Yes.
it saves us so much time. But then what does that mean too? Now that we have some additional time, are we going to be working more longer? Are we gonna take advantage of the fact that we don't have to spend 4 hours doing something that now takes 20 minutes? I'm not sure. I think we're all asking some of those questions, but definitely the industry has changed, is changing, but our industry is always in this constant evolutionary dynamic deal, right? Like I think I'd like to tell my students the story of press releases when I used to put them out in '01, '02. You wanna know how I did that? Stood at the fax machine,
Oh,
entered
yes.
the number one by one for every
Yes.
outlet. Uh, the first time we did layout for, like, internal newsletters, X-Acto knife,
Oh,
paste
yes.
forward, and could you imagine, like, sticky glue? And it's just leaps and bounds since then. So it has changed, it is changing, it will continue to change. I'm excited to see what the next decade brings. I think we as an industry realize we've got to be on our P's and Q's in terms of understanding and being grounded in our code of ethics, because even though and you've seen this, the PR Council and PRSA put out guidelines for how we're all to operate in this new world of AI. Our ethics and principles are the same.
Yes,
We are being given instruction about how to operate with these new tools, but there will be even newer, better, different tools a decade from now, and that means we still need to abide by our code of ethics. It means we still have to be weary of the ways we're operating as PR and communication professionals, so that we don't run the risk of violating any of those ethical principles, or even advertently or inadvertently creating information that results in disinformation, misinformation. I think we just have to remember that we have a code of ethics and abide by it. Or if we just get your gut and conscience will usually tell you if you're off track.
absolutely.
You just need to listen.
Monique, I love so much about what you just said because I think that sometimes these AI tools, you don't really know where they're pulling the data from, if it's accurate. And if you're not in there checking it, you could really get yourself and your client or your organization in some trouble. And I appreciate that you brought up the fax machine and the X-Acto knife, because
Yeah.
when I started as a runner at an advertising agency, they used to send me to the bus station, and if we were running late, we would put the layout for the ad on a bus, and it would get delivered to a different town, and the newspaper would pick it up, and that's how they ran the ad. So
It's
that was
crazy to think about
crazy,
some of that.
right? That
Yeah,
was
but we
crazy.
got it done somehow.
Yeah. Yep. The other one last thing I want to say about AI, and I want to ask you one more question on AI as well, but because AI essentially assimilates information that it has gleaned from other places, AI is not possible of coming up with new ideas, right? So if you want a new, original, authentic idea, you can use AI to help support you, but AI cannot come up with a new idea. And I think that's an important thing to remember. I'm
Yeah.
really curious, how are you using AI in your work day? Do you have any recommendations for tools that you like, or ways that you're using it?
Yeah, I love it as a brain partner, just like feeding it something and asking it questions. I'm thinking about, I haven't done this yet, even on quality assurance, right? Like I'm thinking about training AI so that in putting together like SOPs and processes for the team, that I have a formulaic structure, for example, how we write news releases. I
Yeah.
teach to my undergrad students, and so it frustrates me when I get a news release from somebody on my team that's like in first person, or it's like not in that formulaic structure. I'm like, what is this? So I'm thinking
I
about
can't even look at it, right? Like, I can't even look at this. You have to take it back right now.
or I don't wanna be the one, like, when I see it, I want it to be to a change or 2, right? Like, I don't wanna rewrite your press release. So, I'm thinking about training AI on, like, here's the guy, this is the grade, you grade this, right? And so then, like, it can be run through, you can make these little separate GPTs. Have you heard of this?
I have.
And so I'm thinking about, like, training one for quality assurance on and have if as long as it's not proprietary stuff, right?
Right.
Having the team run it through that before I get it. So then that way I'm not changing stuff that should have already been checked in the checklist.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll see, right? Like that's one thing, but yeah, it's a great brain partner. I've used it to find sources though too, Lynn. And so what I mean by that is you mentioned, and I say this a lot, you can't trust it, but what I have found is if I'm talking about a topic, for instance, and I've kind of got a little bit of maybe an idea written up, I can prompt AI to find credible sources and I'll give it some instructions like only government websites or only, parameters that I know are sources that I can trust. And I will tell it, give me the URL. So now
Nice.
I don't have to like run all around and figure out, I can check it and see, is this, who's funding this website? Like, is this a source that we can trust and use for what we're trying to do? So again,
That's
to
a
me,
great idea, Monique. I have not used it that way. That is a great idea.
oh yeah, sometimes it will tell me it can't, and I'll say, give me the URL again, and then it's weird. But that saves me time too, because otherwise I've got to go try and figure out where these sources came from, and I don't know if I can trust them. I'm trying to think if there's other ways. Those are probably the main ones right now that are saving me time. I'm really excited about getting this this plugin that lets me just talk to it instead of like typing it every time. I can be like in the kitchen or something then, right? Like I'm talking to hey Siri.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
uh-oh, Siri's coming on now.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know. You can never say that. Like everybody's devices in the room are going to come on. I
it's
love
like
it.
when I'm at the store and somebody says mom and I'm like, huh?
Where
Who?
are you? Yeah.
Because that's my name too. My name's Mom.
I love it. I love it, Monique. Well, this is a good time. I'd love to switch gears and talk a bit about the book. And people who listen to the podcast know that I have a goal to write a book and I love to
You
talk
did
to
the same.
authors. Yeah. So tell us, you have got a book, Chart Your Path, a 9-step method to getting unstuck. Can you tell us
Yes.
more about the book?
Yes. So the book, man, first of all, I've always wanted to write a book. So like I'm like you, right? Like it's like, okay, that's on my list. I when you write we're writers too. I think most of us were writers before we found PR and
Yeah.
communication because we mostly started in J schools. I didn't know what PR was until like second semester of J school or maybe even sophomore year. But to my point, I knew that it was something that I wanted to do. I had a couple friends, they're from Omaha. So Jeff Shannon and Nicole Bianchi, both over at Bravium. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. They both had written books. And so I had pulled Jeff aside to talk me through what this was and how did, what was it like? And so he was encouraging me. He plugged me in with his self-publishing company that he used. I reached out to just do a consultation. My very first one, this guy's telling me like what all you have to do. It's a cohort, so it's like a class. You do it like a class.
Oh, that's kinda
Yeah.
nice, right? Because you have people to kinda guide you.
You
Sometimes just
do.
that blank page of going, "I'm gonna write a book," and the cursor's just flashing at you, and you're like,
Oh
"What am I
man.
gonna do?"
It would not be done if I hadn't done it that way. It wouldn't. I think it would have been like a 3-year venture, but it's like just it's almost like if you had a personal trainer and a dietitian, right? Like I'm not gonna do this stuff because nobody's watching, no one's
Yep.
paying attention, and I'm definitely not doing a workout that has me drenched in sweat unless somebody's standing there making me do it. So that was helpful. I'm one of those people that I just need that. But the initial consult, when he was explaining all this to me, I literally said, "I don't have time for this." Because I'm like, "It's a lot." And he said, "You're never gonna have time.
Ooh,
Just start." And so that was
wow.
kind of my gauntlet. But really how it all got birthed, Glenn, was last year as I was transitioning out of the full-time employment, out of the classroom into like, "You're gonna do this. You're jumping all in, doing this firm." That's so scary. And I needed some support for that. I knew I did. So I ended up in a life coaching cohort first.
Yeah.
And I did that with about 12 other women. And we were each other's squad and support group. We still are, right? Like we have our little WhatsApp group and we talk and support each other. But going through that experience, it was a year-long experience. I just learned a lot about myself, my strengths, what my belief system is. Like there was homework that we got that helped us have other people kind of reflect some of that back to us so we could validate what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? All of that. And as part of that coaching, the coach that I worked with, I loved her. She is really good. We had maybe like about 5 conversations and I didn't realize what she was doing during those conversations. But anyway, she ended up like digging out of me what she calls your unique problem solving formula, like in life. Like when you run in
Wow.
difficult challenges in life, Monique Farmer, how do you usually get out of them? If you've had a relationship that you fell out with somebody or, if you had to overcome difficulties that came out of your childhood, like she was just kind of like pulling it out of me almost like when we're doing like trying to put together a news release or an article, right? And so she ended up helping me identify this 9-step process that she's like, you repeat this process when you're in the middle of something sticky, this is what you do. And that's what
Wow.
the book is about that, my 9-step approach to problem solving. So it's me sharing that. Is it positioned as the way? No, it's a way. It's a tool in a toolbox for people who feel like I felt so many times and how I got on the other side from stuck to unstuck.
That's so amazing. All right, I have to ask you because I do a lot of driving, so I'm a book listener. Are you going to do an audio version of the book?
I am. You can't see it, but so I'm still in class, right? So like part of it, it doesn't, if you want to do the audiobook, you get to do it. So they mailed me from Amazon the professional mic with the little, I don't know what this thing is called, the whole soundproof part of it. And I start that class March 11th. So there's a whole class to teach
That's
me
awesome.
how to use my voice correctly to record my audiobook. So that's next.
I love to listen to authors read their own books because I think the way that authors cover the content and the emotion they put into it is really interesting. So I'm really excited about reading it. I'm curious, can you give us any of the key without giving away the book? Give us any of the key messages or knowledges that you share?
The book has exercises.
Oh,
So the key of
wow.
the book is exercises. So I literally kind of like, I'm not kidding. I woke up one morning and I thought, this is with my college professor hat on, like, I can't write a book that's just theoretical. It has to have the practical. I'm big on that. Like if I teach a student a theory, I like for them to understand how does that actually work in the real world. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you can't figure out the connection. It's just theoretical. It's pie in the sky. And so I was like, "Oh my goodness, like I'm writing this book and I don't have a culmination. I don't have like tactical exercises." And so that's when I decided part 3 needed to be exercises. So that's a big takeaway that it's not just theoretical. There is a culmination and it is actually the chart your path map. So it is step by step and there's instructions that help you not only understand what this framework is, but how can you use it for your own situation that you're in.
Very
So,
nice. I can't wait until it's ready. Sounds like it might be one to have a hard copy of and listen to it both. So, Monique, when the book comes out, how will we be able to find it and get a hold of it?
yeah, that's a great question too. Anywhere books are sold, so it's going to be on Amazon. You'll be able to get it on your Kindle. You'll be able to get it in Audible, Barnes and Noble, all the places. But if you just are itching to get your hands on it sooner than that, or at least hold your spot, you can go to avantsolutions.org and click on the tab that says Chart Your Path and place your order. Now you don't have to wait, and you will be one of the first to get it. I am looking for some beta readers who would be
Ooh,
willing to write some book reviews. One of my friends is a magazine publisher, so she's actually going to have somebody on her team book review it. If you have listeners who are interested in that, they can learn more by getting in touch with me. And I know you're going to share how people can do that when we get
we
to the end.
will.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to have all of the links in the show notes. So anybody can go to kidglove.com and click on Monique's episode for Agency for Change, and it'll all be right there. Monique, very exciting. Last thing I want to ask you about the book, any insights on for people like me who would like to write a book? Any suggestions you have, things that you've learned along the way?
Oh, yeah. The first one is what I had to learn when I got my own swift kick in the butt, and that is don't wait, start
Just
now.
do
You're
it.
never going to have enough time. The other one that I would say is writers write. That seems intuitive enough, but it means you're going to have to set aside time to do it. Um,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to just, have blocks of time that you put on your calendar and you do what we call these sprints, writer sprints. I had lots of those, especially if deadlines were coming up. And I have a very patient family because it's like, listen, I'm on a deadline. I'm not going to see y'all this weekend. I'm going to be
Yeah.
in my office from, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And when I did those sprints, that's when I got a lot done, a lot. The other is just trusting the process. There's definitely times of frustration, or there were times when the first part of how my cohort worked was called you work with your developmental editor. And that is just get it out. Like just get it out, get it on paper. It doesn't have to be perfect. Get it out. It's the framework, it's the skeletal version. And that's frustrating for me because I can be a perfectionist.
Oh, yeah, right? You want
Right.
everything to be
So
just
frustrating.
right.
Nope, that's not how and so the nice thing about that is you hit your word count because you have to have it's math. It's all math at first, right? And then at the end too, but you realize that getting to write a book, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, really is a matter of words and word count. So you need to have about 40,000 words to have a
Oof.
good start for a good, yeah, for a good nonfiction book. And so we did have that. But then, like, as I was rereading it from the first, I mean, the book is so different than when we when we first. I'm reading it like, what in the world does that mean? I gotta rewrite all of these chapters, but it's like that's the journey, right? So just
Yeah.
stand with the journey and stand with the process.
I appreciate you sharing that. So, since writers write and communicators communicate, I'm going to ask you my favorite question next. We've asked it on every episode of the podcast.
Okay.
I feel so lucky that I get to speak with knowledgeable, inspiring people like you, Monique. I'm wondering if you can give us a few original words of wisdom to inspire our listeners.
Yes, I one of my favorite, and I don't know if I say it externally enough. I say it in this house a lot to my children, and it is external validation is artificial validation. And why I say that is because we live in this world of social media where if you're comparing or you're looking at what people are posting on a day-to-day basis, most people are painting this picture that life is this glorious, perfect all the time journey, and it's just not true, right? And if you're trying to compare your life to other people's lives, or if you're waiting for someone else to validate you before you feel good about who you are and what you have to offer to the world, that is a dangerous space to be in. If you don't already know or learn who you are and find your own value and then stand on that to go out into the world, you are at a lot of risk for always waiting to get that from outside of yourself when it really lives inside of you.
Monique, that is beautiful. I'm just going to repeat it. External validation is artificial validation. That is so good. And you know what I love about that? It brings us full circle because when we were talking about the 2024 public relations trends, your top trend was authenticity. And I think that ties so much back to the quote you just gave us. It's amazing. Monique, I love every time I get a chance to talk to you, and today has been no exception to that. As we wrap up our time together, what is the most important thing you would like our listeners to remember about the work that you're doing?
Ooh, I would have to go to passion. For me, my first love was writing, and then I got introduced into this world of public relations and communication, and I can't think of anything else that I would rather be doing, right? Like in terms of having the privilege to be able to help other communicators be better. We get to coach leaders on how to put their best foot forward, and when they're, getting on camera or speaking to the world, we get to help people frame their narratives in a way that helps people better understand what they're doing that's creating impact in communities. And I think that that is born out of just true passion and the seed that for me got planted when I was a 9-year-old girl. And I really found my love for writing. So I would hope that listeners can remember that if they can find their own passion, you're not going to work every day, right? Like you're
Mm.
doing something you love, you get to do it. You
That's
get
amazing. I love that you said that. I am a very passionate person and feel very lucky to be in this field of communications. It's my favorite thing about the podcast to get to talk with people who are passionate about what they do and making a positive difference in the world. So, Monique, on that note, I just want to say I truly believe the world needs more people like you. I can't wait to read the book. And I just love the work that you and your team are doing at Avant Solutions. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Lan. I look forward to hearing the podcast in its entirety, and I appreciate you inviting me.
We hope you enjoyed today's Agency for Change podcast. To hear all our interviews with those who are making a positive change in our communities, or to nominate a changemaker you'd love to hear from, visit KidGlov.com at KIDGLOV.com to get in touch. As always, if you like what you've heard today, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.